For decades, large American megachurches symbolized a new era of modern Christianity, blending tradition with scale, media, and cultural relevance. Among the most prominent examples is Lakewood Church in Houston, often associated with Joel Osteen, which became known for its stadium-like setting, polished production, and message of hope and encouragement. At its peak, it represented a model of religious engagement that attracted thousands weekly, both in person and through broadcast audiences worldwide. However, over time, subtle but significant changes began to emerge across similar churches. Attendance patterns shifted, engagement styles evolved, and the emotional atmosphere of large gatherings started to feel different to many participants. What once appeared to be an unstoppable expansion of megachurch culture is now being reassessed in light of cultural, technological, and spiritual transformation. The question is no longer whether these institutions are influential, but whether their original model is still sustainable in a rapidly changing world where faith, community, and attention are being reshaped by new expectations and alternatives. The rise of megachurch culture and modern religious experience. Megachurches emerged as a defining feature of late 20th century and early 21st century American religion. They were built on the idea that scale, accessibility, and modern presentation could bring faith to wider audiences. Instead of traditional small sanctuaries, these churches adopted auditorium-style architecture, advanced sound systems, multimedia screens, and professionally produced worship experiences. Leaders like Rick Warren, Bill Hybels, and others helped shape this model into a global phenomenon, emphasizing outreach, growth, and practical messages. Lakewood Church became one of the most recognizable examples, transforming a former sports arena into a massive worship center. This environment was designed not just for worship but for experience, complete with parking coordination, volunteer systems, children's programs, bookstores, and social spaces. For many attendees, the church became more than a place of worship. It became a weekly destination offering inspiration, community, and entertainment. The appeal lay in its ability to merge spiritual teaching with cultural familiarity, making religion feel accessible, engaging, and emotionally uplifting, while still maintaining a sense of reverence and structure. Early signs of strain and internal reflection in megachurch systems. Even as megachurches grew in size and influence, internal questions began to surface about the depth of spiritual transformation occurring within these large communities. One of the most significant moments of reflection came from internal studies conducted by churches such as Willow Creek Community Church under Bill Hybels. These assessments revealed a surprising gap between participation and transformation. While attendance, volunteering, and engagement metrics appeared strong, many individuals reported feeling spiritually stagnant. They were active in church programs but did not feel personally transformed or deeply connected in their faith journey. Instead, a subtle shift had occurred. Many participants began to see themselves more as consumers of religious content rather than active participants in spiritual growth. Services provided inspiration and encouragement, but that experience often did not translate into lasting personal change. Leadership openly acknowledged this issue, recognizing that the system may have unintentionally prioritized attendance and engagement over deeper discipleship. Despite this awareness, the megachurch model continued expanding, even as these underlying concerns remained unresolved beneath the surface of visible success and growth. The disruption of 2020 and the sudden collapse of routine worship. The global pandemic in 2020 marked a turning point that no church model could fully anticipate. Across the world, physical gatherings were suspended, and megachurches like Lakewood Church were forced to transition abruptly to online services. For institutions built on atmosphere, collective energy, and shared physical presence, this shift was profound. Initially, many assumed it would be temporary and that congregations would eagerly return once restrictions lifted. However, as time passed, new habits formed. People became accustomed to watching services from home, often in a more relaxed and personal environment. The absence of crowds changed the emotional tone of worship, and for some, the experience felt less compelling without the energy of a live audience. Sermons that once felt powerful in large rooms now felt more subdued through screens. This period also created space for reflection, as individuals reassessed their relationship with organized religion. What had previously been routine attendance became optional engagement, and the assumption that people would automatically return to physical gatherings proved increasingly uncertain. Post-pandemic attendance, decline, and shifting participation patterns. After churches reopened, many leaders expected a strong return to in-person attendance, but the reality was more complex. While some congregants returned, others did not, and overall attendance in many large churches declined significantly. Reports from various megachurches suggested reductions in participation ranging from noticeable to substantial, with some communities losing long-term members and volunteers. This trend was not isolated to a single church but reflected a broader shift across multiple regions and denominations. The reasons were varied. Some individuals had developed new routines, others had relocated spiritually or geographically, and many had reevaluated their priorities during the period of isolation. Additionally, online access to religious content made it easier to explore alternative sermons, teachings, and communities beyond local churches. As a result, traditional attendance patterns weakened. Churches that once relied on consistent weekly participation now faced more fluid engagement, where individuals moved between online and in-person experiences or disengaged altogether. The post-pandemic period revealed that the relationship between congregants and large church institutions had become less stable and more individualized than before. Structural challenges and cultural critiques of megachurch models. As megachurches expanded, several structural and cultural concerns became more visible. One major critique is the tendency for large-scale religious environments to unintentionally prioritize emotional experience over deeper theological engagement. Services often emphasize uplifting messages, motivational themes, and accessible teachings designed for broad audiences. While this approach increases reach, critics argue it can reduce opportunities for addressing more complex or challenging aspects of faith. Another concern is the risk of passive participation. In very large congregations, individuals can easily remain anonymous, limiting opportunities for personal accountability and meaningful relationships. This can lead to a form of attendance without deep integration into community life. Additionally, the emphasis on production quality, lighting, music, and media can create expectations for constant engagement and emotional stimulation, potentially making quieter forms of worship feel less satisfying by comparison. Over time, these dynamics may contribute to a consumer-like approach to faith, where individuals evaluate services based on personal experience rather than communal or spiritual depth. These critiques do not negate the value of megachurches, but highlight tensions within their model. Joel Osteen, Lakewood Church, and the question of changing influence. Lakewood Church, closely associated with Joel Osteen, represents one of the most visible examples of the megachurch model. Known for its messages of hope, positivity, and encouragement, it has attracted millions of viewers through televised and online sermons. However, like many large churches, it exists within the broader shifts affecting religious institutions worldwide. Changes in attendance patterns, evolving expectations from younger generations, and increased access to diverse spiritual content have all influenced how people engage with such churches. While claims of dramatic decline should be viewed cautiously and within broader context, it is evident that large congregations are navigating a more fragmented religious environment. Influence today is not measured solely by physical attendance but also by digital reach and global audience engagement. As a result, churches like Lakewood are adapting to a hybrid model of presence, combining in-person gatherings with extensive online ministry. The challenge lies in maintaining relevance and connection in a world where spiritual content is abundant and no longer confined to a single physical or organizational space. The role of technology and the internet in reshaping religious engagement. Technology has fundamentally transformed how people access religious teachings and communities. In earlier decades, megachurches had a significant advantage because they could produce high-quality sermons, music, and worship experiences that smaller churches could not easily replicate. However, the rise of streaming platforms, social media, podcasts, and video sharing services has dramatically expanded access to religious content. Today, individuals can listen to sermons from around the world, engage with theological discussions, and explore diverse interpretations of faith without attending a physical church. This decentralization of religious content has reduced the exclusivity once held by large institutions. It has also changed expectations, particularly among younger audiences who value flexibility and authenticity. Instead of committing to a single congregation, many people curate their own spiritual experiences from multiple sources. This shift has weakened traditional models of church loyalty and attendance consistency. At the same time, it has created new opportunities for outreach, allowing churches to reach global audiences beyond their physical locations. The result is a more fragmented but also more accessible religious ecosystem, broader church declines, and examples of institutional strain. The challenges faced by megachurches are not isolated but part of a wider pattern affecting many large religious institutions. Some well-known churches have experienced leadership transitions, internal controversies, or structural changes that significantly impacted attendance and trust. For example, Saddleback Church experienced shifts following leadership changes, while Willow Creek Community Church underwent organizational reflection after internal challenges. In more extreme cases, institutions like Mars Hill Church collapsed entirely following leadership controversies and structural breakdowns. These examples highlight how dependent large churches can be on leadership stability, organizational cohesion, and public trust. When any of these elements weaken, the effects can be significant and long-lasting. At the same time, cultural shifts toward individualized spirituality and smaller community-based worship have contributed to declining participation in large institutional settings. Younger generations, in particular, often prioritize authenticity, transparency, and relational depth over scale and production. This does not indicate a universal decline in faith, but rather a reconfiguration of how faith is practiced and expressed in contemporary society. Adaptation, reinvention, and the future of large churches. In response to these challenges, many churches are actively adapting their models. Some are transitioning towards smaller, more relational structures that emphasize small groups, community engagement, and personal discipleship. Others are doubling down on media production, expanding their digital presence to reach global audiences. Hybrid models are becoming increasingly common, combining in-person worship with online participation. This allows churches to maintain reach while adjusting to changing attendance patterns. Additionally, there is a growing emphasis on authenticity, transparency, and addressing real-life struggles more directly in sermons and teachings. Churches are also experimenting with decentralized models, including home gatherings and community-based worship spaces. These adaptations reflect an understanding that the future of faith communities may not rely solely on large physical gatherings. Instead, they may exist as networks of connected but flexible communities. While some traditional structures may continue to shrink, others may evolve into new forms that better align with contemporary cultural and technological realities. Conclusion: a transition rather than an end. The narrative of declining megachurch attendance is not simply a story of loss, but one of transformation. While institutions like Lakewood Church remain influential, they operate within a rapidly changing religious environment shaped by technology, cultural shifts, and evolving expectations of community and spirituality. The traditional model of large weekly gatherings is no longer the sole or dominant expression of faith for many people. Instead, religious practice is becoming more diverse, individualized, and decentralized. Some individuals continue to find meaning in large congregations, while others seek smaller, quieter, or more flexible forms of worship. This shift does not necessarily indicate a decline in spirituality itself, but rather a redefinition of how faith is experienced and lived. The future of organized religion will likely involve a combination of large institutions, digital platforms, and intimate community gatherings. What remains constant is the human search for meaning, connection, and purpose, even as the structures that support that search continue to evolve in unexpected ways.